and somebody would get that door over there, and I'll get the doors over here and then walk out.
Oh, it's all right.
Is yours live? Is yours live? What's yours?
All right. Yeah. Do we have anything on the watch this thing?
No, my computer's frozen. So.
That's probably
Yeah.
It's pretty easy. I don't do it clearly.
Jacob, I was on one.
You please. No.
I was like strung together.
It's on the back side.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. Yeah. Okay. Or it's fine, you can sit down.
So is the consensus thank you speeches before the debate, or okay? Well, I want to watch.
Wait, what's it? Are you leaving first?
After the thank you speech, I'm gonna go take a 5-minute break.
Cool. Have fun.
Okay, computer is back up. Can I borrow your stand for my thank you speech?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Do I just start?
Yeah.
Okay. I never, when I started debate in 7th grade, because my best friend Georgianne told me she wouldn't take the train without me if I didn't come join debate, expected that I would be standing here. But like, I'm very, very happy that I am. I'd like to thank you guys for putting up with me and supporting me and pushing me to do better, and Marshall for teaching me to read less theory and to be interested in philosophy, and Varun and Chris Kim, who taught me so much about debate. Also Rahul for drilling with me until like 12 every single night at NSD and teaching me how to answer arguments. And Tom Evnan for putting me in top lab when I didn't qual my sophomore year, because that's when I really learned how to answer arguments. I'd like to thank all my friends who are always there for me when debate is really stressful and make me love the activity. So to Ollie, Jack, Noah, Lavanya, Morgan, Rafi, and all of Scarsdale for being my team away from team. I love all of you guys, and I'm so lucky to have you. To Sarah, Kogan, Joanna, and Ben, who supported me when I was an irritating novice and taught me how to debate. Thank you to Noel for always taking the Hunter team to tournaments and putting up with us. I always appreciate your sarcasm and your wit. To everyone on the Hunter debate team for always supporting me and being funny and helping keep me grounded. So to Alina, Josh, Ruth, and everyone else, I'm so lucky to have you guys. The Hunter administration for being so supportive, especially Miss Lukesh for always making me laugh and supporting me even though I never come to class. And to Mr. Lang, who I know won't fail me for missing so much debate, although I'm right there. So I know you won't do it. And thank you to my parents and my brother for encouraging me even when I'm drilling at 1 in the morning and everyone's angry. And thank you to everyone running TAB and to UK for hosting TOC, and to everyone because I love debate so much and I'm so lucky to have done it. Oh, and also I'm sure I forgot people because there are so many great people. So to you who I forgot, I also love you.
All right, my turn. Nina joined LD because apparently she wasn't allowed to go on the train outside of that. But I joined debate because I decided to quit policy after one day because I was afraid of spreading. It didn't solve a lot, but here we are. But seriously, I wouldn't be here without a couple people. First and foremost, I want to thank both my parents, Charlene and Jim. They've paid for almost everything for my debate experience and always been there to support me, whether through the wins or the losses. And it's really just meant so much to me. Even when I've been incredibly argumentative and using my debate skills maybe not for the best of the world. I also want to thank my sister, Sabrina, for getting me into debate. She was the one who first did policy, kind of quit policy because I didn't want to hang out with her too much. So I guess you indirectly got me here. Just being a great older sister as well. Debate-wise, the first person I want to thank is Nick Klemp. Nick, I never would have known what LD was if it wasn't for you. You might think you're not as involved as you think you are in my debate career, but honestly, I can't think of anyone who is more integral to my entire experience. I also want to thank everyone on the PCDS speech and debate team, especially all the people who are here for TOC. And even more specifically, I want to thank William Porter, my partner in crime. Thank you for putting up with me in all our hotel rooms, for my weird leg twitch when we have to sleep in the same room, and for not getting angry at me when I fall asleep too quickly while you can't fall asleep. I also want to thank Shrieker, Charlotte Lawrence, and Jerry Chen, who were my lab leaders, and Shrieker, who was my coach originally during sophomore year, when I was doing my freshman and sophomore year. I thought I wanted to be a lay debater during that part, and they convinced me that lay debate is not as fun and that I should be a circuit debater instead. So thank you for that. Thank you, Bob Obering, Adam Tomasi, Marshall Thompson, and Jog Scoggin for being my lab leaders at PDI. Also, specifically Scoggin, thank you for helping me out at this tournament, cutting some sweet cars and really just helping out. Most importantly, I want to thank the debate drill squad as a whole. I come from a school which has a really great speech and debate program on the whole, but it doesn't have a lot of circuit LD. And that was really difficult for me at the first part of my career. I didn't have as many arguments. I wasn't exposed to a lot of things. I always felt like I just couldn't have the prep to compete. And y'all have really helped me out and just been able to get me here in the first place. More specifically, a couple people in the debate drill squad. I want to thank Matt Chen for always having a good mindset and a smile on his face. He also convinced me to read a little bit of analytic philosophy sometimes, which is always nice. Sekou, you've been a baller all year. You've had a fantastic junior year. Sorry you couldn't be at TOC, but I know you'll wreck it next year. And then most importantly, I want to thank Jong and Catherine for hanging out with me for this TOC and specifically for doing prep with me after they got eliminated. You had no reason to do that, and y'all stayed up late, you cut cards, you just did anything that was needed, and it meant so much to me. Y'all are honestly wonderful human beings, and I didn't know what I'd do without you. Last and not least, Paras Kumar, you totally shaped me as a debater, and I don't know what I would have done without you. I know you think I don't have a lot of emotions, but you were the most important person for my entire debate career. You shaped almost everything I've done. You've done countless hours of drills with me, hundreds if not thousands. I love you. This one's for you. Thank you.
Almost forgot there's a debate.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm making the speech talk right now.
Cool. I need a moment anyways.
Yeah. Who wants to be on the email chain?
You share
We can wait to start if you want.
Just give me like 15 seconds.
Yeah, if you want to like grab water or something, and then we can
I
start.
got it.
Oh God, are you okay?
Yeah.
Pretty regular.
You're saying yeah, but your body's saying no.
It's just how I've been this weekend.
It might be too disappointing to his friends.
Well, I think I have zinc, which is like to deal with colds if you want them.
I'll be okay.
Okay.
I'll do that.
I just don't want you to like
it's like,
die.
like my lungs are really messed up right now.
Okay. I sent it. Everyone, let me know when you have it.
I have not done that yet.
Okay. Has everyone else gotten it?
I have it.
I got it.
Okay. Just let me know when you have it.
Yeah, I spilled my name.
Oh, no.
It's just gonna keep happening. You gotta get used to it.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
It's missing an L in Gmail.
Oh, that one.
Gmail.
All right, I'm good.
Cool. Everyone else good?
I affirm only the pragmatists that they can account for the uncertainty of the external world. Laws have not to be the world of action of all system activities that no way remove uncertainty or philosophy is conceived of null and null. Philosophers report the imaginative as a prize from which division between the ordinary and extraordinary elements ways your souls for activity is one constant adaptation and just in the light of the limited conditions of this philosophy. Let's give up inquiry after absolute origins, determination conditions of experience that generate specific values to be turned to experience to give up effort to cure a world by means of consenting our efforts or located practical activity, not quest for certainty. There's no way to explain the meaning of a word without limiting a sphere of meaning to what makes a practical difference. Otherwise, there can be no fact of the matter that allows for epistemic assessment. Pierce. What do we mean by calling the thing around the conception of this holy lessons conceive effects? There's no difference between a or a thing and a something, and so long as they're not brought to the test of question which differ under circumstances which not arise is not a question of fact, but only the most perspicuous arrangement of them. He continues, if we know the effects of force, we are acquainted with every fact which implied in saying a force exists, whereas a doing in democracy, towards a point, the demands of an ethical theory must be responsive to the conditions in which agents live. That demands a doing in theory of democracy, London, to peace and rises and quits. Dewey, only a society that can grow into full citizens would be free platforms for social decision-making allow pragmatic advancement given changing and that supports a pragmatic theory of democracy doing. Democratic political forms rest on the idea that no person is better good enough to rule others without consent affected by social institutions of habit. Managing them is loose permitted space to suppress others are supposed to be wiser and will have more to decide the question and methods by which understanding practice and normative what is good. Not things are the foundation of democracy is not that things are complete, but that they will grow and generate progressive technology to kind of collective act democratic faith is that each shall be changed an opportunity to contribute whatever she is capable of contributing without them. Individuals are not free to develop in society is deprived of what they might contribute. Thus, the standard is consistency with pragmatic decision procedure clarification versus democracy plays a procedural, not substantive role in the pragmatic position is not tells us what impacts matter, nor is it just another impact to weigh against. Instead, it is a decision procedure that tells us what questions to ask and how to determine answers to those questions. It does not matter if Japanese internment would have improved safety because the government cannot rightly even consider the structurally undemocratic policy, putting up the significant benefits of particular speech restriction just do not matter if we were reflected from factoring those considerations into our deliberations. Second, impacts cannot be isolated from their history. Arguments that claim some particular speech restriction is good do not matter if they do not consider the history of such exceptions doing. Existence of belief determines something worth depends upon genetic considerations that we find historically belief pertaining the integrity of social life worth is guaranteed. The genetic theory establishes presumption of validity. Third, pragmatism is a decision procedure for any impact evaluation. For instance, TGS do not make sense since they answer the wrong question. They say what is the best framework to use for debate theoretically, but that is the wrong question. We should ask that we should decide the framework on theoretical considerations and all prefer additionally one. Individual identity is constituted by experience and interaction with the world. Moral considerations arise in response to specific conditions only. This provides a coherent notion of free action. Rogers, to summarize this, the efficacy of action of individuals can be assessed by their ability to address a problematic environment experience. Twisted travel from some fixed category obscures the fact that our choices are largely in response to the setting action works out of tensions of pressures and experience for volition and inquiry develop out of immediate experience intelligible through the narrative structure of experience. Moral questions are an outgrowth of the problems we encounter as social beings experience. The sexual morality provides the starting point and terminal point for setting problems for resolutions of relationship between individuals and their environment. Unity, individuals are seeking prognosis to achieve a better world. Two, substantive warrants see theoretical ones, but pragmatism is essential in education, particularly in the context of the topic. Article 14. Teachers can respond to HC by highlighting importance of acting contextually. I present a two-year proposal for teachers instead of producing contextual elements and more decisions they need to be embraced by using moral imagination to reflect on different possible actions and consequences in relation to the actual situation. Teachers to choose action in a way that takes contextual elements into account. Connection. I'll defend the whole resolution. Connection. First, schools must be guardians of free expression. Otherwise, students will be willing to cede to external authorities after leaving educational institutions. Act and Simpson 10. Schools have responsibility of seeing those who live with false ideas where they can get courage to express them as necessary. The free expression, routine instruction, and democratic administration of schools is the short way to create a human that submits to authority and to express will stand up. People who will stand for free intelligence and let them share and permeates the school. Freedom is a condition of realization of potentialities of an individual and a progress of freedom. Truth becomes so still. They cease to become truths and mere dictates of authority that links to the standard challenging authority to dictates about appropriate speech is necessary to produce a democratic ontology and self-critical citizens that challenge power structure birth time. Inconvenience seem to be contribute and integrated practice pedagogical cells and cells. People from uncritical sleepwalking schizophrenia can be directed towards a critique of institutions functioning as a basis for democratic ideology because interpretory qualities can be directed internal or internal ways represents the principle needed to market-driven education. Second, avoiding censorship of even offensive ideas is necessary to safeguard universities as predictors of democratic values and avoid dogmatism and groupthink. Western Door 17. Maintenance of democratic society because the goals will be allowed to seek to engage with people who challenge our views and oppose our versus those with whom we disagree, especially with him engaging in level debate. One's understanding of truth and human one's ability to defend it, not as infallible, someone who is not fallen into worshiping our opinions above truth, love to listen, willingness to listen and engage, contribute to a milieu in which people feel free to speak their minds and explore arguments that democratic established ways of thinking such as those, predicts against dogmatism and groupthink. This links to actually skip the Rogers card. Third, pragmatism supports freedom of expression because freedom of expression is the only method of social change that achieves reliable and effective radical revision of society. Roosevelt 98 summarizes 40. Jesus was the president rather than force reform rather than revolution. Those upper level societies will foster peaceful free description that unhindered free expression ranks paramount. The permanency of free expression enlarges the rise of free description. Fourth, the constitutional protection of free speech have achieved by a long history of pragmatic methodology that provides extremely strong democrats for maintaining and strengthening the procedure being analysis. Working out a pragmatic response to the conditions of speech and that speech routines comes from awareness that we live in. Historical conditions where free speech is slavery, collectively featured African government activities, certain decisions are of particular historical judgments. The Constitution is grounded in pragmatic theory and the practical effects of arguments matter. Censors claim to cure by some external good, but censorship always fills the same purpose to consolidate power and serve the interests of the government control stack. And Simpson 12 revolutionary period censors the concentration of power. Concentration gives to the best interest of the people. It is important not to be distracted into allowing any issue, no matter how useful, until displays freedom of intelligence by means of speech. Do you want me to send a marked doc, or did you get what I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me know when you get it.
Yes. Everyone ready? Let's talk about the arguments of why pragmatism creates like procedures. What is this like? How does this filter offense? Like, what counts as a procedure?
Sure. So it argues that there's a certain way in which we approach argumentation in the first place. So arguments have to be historically grounded. So for example, something that's just proven to be historically completely invalid would not be something that we would defer to. There also has to be
What is
some
the
sort of
warrant for that historical claim?
yeah. So that's the Dewey evidence, which argues that if like historically a belief has been useful in shaping the way in which we perceive the world, that provides a reason in order to err towards it.
All right. What's the second argument for why procedures matter?
Or like, what do you mean why procedures matter? Like the entirety of the framework is a procedure.
Yeah. But why do I'm wondering how it filters offense? Like, what counts as a procedure for discourse?
Sure. So there's like it must have a historical basis. The second argument is that it must be grounded in a respect for pluralism. So any sort of theory that promotes a hegemonic idea of value and a hegemonic idea of like what would matter in a given society that they impose on
Okay, so
individuals
imposing
would be a
like,
bad thing.
what if you impose like a very good value? Like, what if you impose value like racism is wrong, or like you shouldn't murder other people?
Yeah, I mean like the badness of racism and murder would be consistent with a standard that requires respect for individual space for freedom and like those kind of things.
Okay, but do people have the freedom to kill each other?
No.
Okay, why not? What's the distinction?
Yeah, so the argument is like one of the procedural aspects of democracy is that there's a structure of like rights in the relationship between individuals. Obviously, like murdering someone doesn't respect their right to be part of a pluralistic society.
Okay, so if you violate someone else's rights,
Like
then
it's not rights in the sense that the act is like Kantian, but it's in the sense that there's a procedure that requires the respect for an individual.
all right, that's
So like the
fine.
government would be precluded from asking like, would it be permissible to frame an innocent person and sentence them to death just because it would create a deterrent effect? Like those kind of questions are structurally undemocratic, so the state wouldn't be in a position to answer.
All right, that's fine. Let's go on to the second argument why pragmatism is essential to education.
Sure.
What is the warrant?
So the claim is that it structures like interactions within educational institutions and can create productive conversations.
Why?
So like it gives the example of with hate speech, you can emphasize the importance of context in determining how you respond to something, which is like really important in the way in which you grapple with difficulties in a given situation. So like overly generalistic responses to problems in education are probably a bad thing. So the abs account for particularism is able to account for how we act in educational conditions or situations.
All right. Let's go on to the contentions that they need to cede to external authorities. Why don't you cede certain things to authorities, i.e. like your right to say things that are not constitutionally protected?
So the argument isn't like you cede rights, but that like individuals will be willing to have ideas imposed on them by external authorities without questioning those ideas.
All right, that makes sense. 5 minutes, start charging.
Also, you got that I defend the whole resolution.
Yeah, I got you. All right, so prep 326 left.
What's the order?
3 off the case. All right, it's sent.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's not gonna be sent. Also, the NC will be discussing non-consensual image distribution of sexually explicit images. Is that all right with everyone?
Yep.
Phone call's not good.
Oh, that would be important.
Yeah.
It's a phone.
You order?
3 off case.
Cool.
Let me know when everyone's ready then. Well, you good? First off, theory hedge. First vote negative when offensive counter-rotation gives 1 AR theory key negative attributes off the argument after class of both theory or substance. 2 AR 2 has no 3 in R means this one has to be both forwards and backwards, which means they're always overcut or overcut theory already committed substance this round. So negative theory can't equalize students that way. Point probability can verify that using this round while things like chilling effect are hypothetical viewpoint. Reversibility structure access to the values always worse than substance abuse because being checked and smart check back marginally some arguments, but finding through multiple layers can be checked back seconds or used reasonably with the bright line of if you can see the framework generate at least 2 independent substantive values on the kind of line and the status being unconditional proof series variables because you can have substantive values and strategic variability computing sure patients sensitized them to read theory and ignore substance because you only need a margin on all offense step benefits 8 point strategy theory with 7 minutes AC offensive force jump to multiple minutes 2 point substance education by definition theory takes out substance takes away from substance which I always was left 2 minutes to talk now. Next off NC go the standard is maximum expected happiness so first revision intuition student concludes usually you can't see wait right middle level more reasons has been useless people rather than whether just assessing when the torture is back in the meeting about let's see more such as object level realize the project when normalizing intuition see all usual intuitions you're rocky delete keep all intuition your key burdens even notice potent is intuition just because it seems like a good idea after being reflecting on it. You probably usually run into incoherence, which shows that people will chop their own freedom after creating the problem the wrong way. You just trust your first impressions. Research on scope insensitivity shows that people pay the same amount, say 50,000 lines and 5,000 lines. The intuition is wrong. The brain can multiply it. Auto virus which coherence which usually show the brain doesn't multiply. When you reflect and correct the research, you get a common for each other multiply. That's usual now. Also, that evidence was bracketed for clarity. Seconds that usual special theoretically 8 point ground. Every impact function is my standard about other premises with arguments. You have key advantages because equal arguments equals about apprentice about also you can't get from the fair. You go into topic education. Usual forces to read arguments about the impact of the rest of the group. While other premises are logic and competent meta ethics. Very proven the offensive actions like 2 into athletes like the 4 cards on good heat education now ways we only have 2 inspiration topic we have learned the years to learn backfill theory perceived substitution justification still has effectiveness outside of rounding which affects evaluation subjects next up. Counterpoint text, public college and University of the United States are not restrict any constitutional speech except in the case of non-consensual image distribution of sex. Images, it competes on potential image distribution. Images constitute practice speech. Allow laws on college campuses. Forward 16 brackets for offensive potentially offensive language. Non-consensual image distribution presents authority. First Amendment issue. Non-consensual image distribution is protected speech. The Supreme Court has recognized the right for media to publish on the lawfully obtained content. Non-consensual image distribution is legally obtained. It depicts a legal act. This does not separate non-consensual image distribution from protected speech that may cause other emotional stress. And Vermont proves non-consensual image distribution law was ruled unconstitutional. Agreement 16 Western Vermont Supreme Court judge held that the state's non-consensual image distribution law was unconstitutional. Judge Howard engaged in analysis whether the law passed First Amendment scrutiny and sees the city camp consults terrorist perpetrators creates a cultural shift. Section Franks 14 brackets potentially offensive language. A lawsuit is essential to perpetrators because it should show up on the record forever. Malicious actors have little incentive to frame law. Since the message of potential perpetrators of the non-consensual image distribution inflicts grave harm and that have consequences, send the message that individuals' bodies have their own. The condemnation of child pornography exemplifies our collective understanding through the distribution of certain images of harmful deeds. The impact of non-consensual image distribution causes a sight-chilling effect of survivors who are afraid to speak up on sounds called psychological one. Section Franks 14 brackets potentially offensive language. Survivors struggle with anxiety, panic attacks, the instrument images such that result of abuses, coercion. The abusers use the threat of disclosure to keep their partners under control because internet searches named they just like the images named many lose their jobs, target individuals without withdrawal from online activity. Survivors internalize frightening and demeaning messages inflict serious and irredeemable damage on individual survivors. Turns the 8 points that you can experience your trauma specifically excludes other from engaging in the pragmatism arguments at first place point. But also it's also adding on to the 8 point. It's also historical because we look at how constitutional practice speech has been analyzed in the past and also how this this affects people in capacity of viewpoints that performative double-blind debate should be a safe space debate to exclude arguments for why this would not impact underneath the framework or reasons why it would even be a good thing under that framework that make debate space unsafe because they're, which is specifically that because this is the two finals of the TOC and they are debaters who have had their nude images disclosed on the internet and that they would be saying that was a good thing underneath their framework, which is an independent impact to the argument. C point is that they say in cross-examination that things like removing people's rights would be a bad thing, which is obviously this is an example of because it steals something from someone else, i.e. their image, their images, and steals all the security, which justifies justifies the same sort of rights violation that they talk about in cross-examination, which means NCS is fine, which means it definitely turns AC. Start on the offense. As an overview, any reason for the AC arguments of the app or turn the counterpoint is just intellectual gymnastics and justify things like racism, sexism, sexism. 8 points that you can't just reimagine and use counter speech or use pragmatist theories of images of your disclosed. You cannot because the other people know about you and your reputation has already been destroyed. If you just imagine it, then things doesn't make anything better. B point is there's no uniqueness for any arguments. The people who are disclosing these sort of things are terrible people, which means they're not persuaded by things like counter speech and they're not going to be able to reimagine themselves with underneath any sort of practice ethic group there. First and fifth argument why authoritarianism. First is that this also applies to trends, also applies to the absence of the sense of things that are not constitutional speech, which means that they still rely on the same sort of internal versus external weighing. Second step, this is we should be intolerant to intolerance, which is the argument of the counterclaim, which means that which means that if you disclose sort of things, that it's a good thing to be authoritarian. 3 that BS also like there's no like jurisdiction with the college to decide about what they want to do, what they want to restrict. The counterclaim requires the strict justice, saying nothing else to say. Avoiding censorship is even offensive things, bad thing, but we can still have discussions with both counterclaim, just not on non-consensual image distributions, and we can still have an open discussion. We just can't disclose images. This is freedom of expression, but this is impact justified. It says that we need to open up procedures in order to have procedures, but there's no reason why opening up those procedures are a good thing in the first place. They say historical, and we need historical evidence. Is genuinely true about the Constitution. I said a little bit of a presumption, but the counterclaim proves that the presumption is applied incorrectly in the circumstance because the Constitution messed up in the circumstance, which means that it's a bad circumstance which would override this presumption. Second, there's no reason why we should care about historical evidence when the people are being screwed over now, which is the impact of the case.
Now, the framework start on the substantive that are like theoretical justifications that are approaching evidence.
First, the ground arguments outweigh because it proves that you can impact your arguments back into the ground standard, which means it co-opts all your offense. Second step, this is just your argument by debate easy to pluralistic, but debate already is pluralistic. You can make whatever arguments you win. 3 is that you said that you need to wait why particularism is good, but obviously the NC co-opts all the arguments, since the NC is also particularity. Says that we should focus on the particular instances of the PIC and the NC, which means to co-opt all their offense. Now, overview to the framework arguments. First, that the fragmented source like the app exclude inequality from the knowledge production. Proves that you should reject the framework. Colons 11 words. Stated narrative that trace American practices seem to have no place for complex social inequalities. All the practices remain unaffected by race and sex and sexism, class exploitation, nationalism, blank question, knowledge productions in general. The bracket of these system power out of the knowledge constellation, durable themes such as democracy, science, enlightenment, fairness were evaluated over the plurals of marginalist expressions characterized by inequality. Second, that pragmatist class back to the NC and also cares about structural violence. 8 point is that structural violence collapses the same way that rulers collapses that actually actual democratic expression is only created in instances where you have we see a normal good end. However, in a world where oppression is of a certain group within democracy or someone else's happiness being harmed, you never are able to fully explore and include this group, which takes out all their offense. They say participants can account for uncertainty, but obviously an intuition solve, which is the starting point of the NC framework. They say there's no explanation without limits, but there's no reason why we need to explain things, which is the least of all the arguments. They say demands for ethical theory must be responsive to some sort of starting point. Yes, they are responsive, but then we need to make sure that we fix the thing that has started that response, i.e. the material balance that it impacts out of the counterpoint. We need to fix that problem, which the app doesn't allow us to do.
Okay, cool. Did you read everything?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, when you're good.
I'm ready.
Okay, so is answering the counterplan unsafe? Does answering the counterplan make debate unsafe?
If you say it's good underneath your framework or impact tournament, yes. But you can go for permutations, competition, linked terms, etc.
So let's talk about the framework answers. So if I can see the theoretical justifications come first and then I win like my theoretical justifications, do any of the framework answers matter?
You can collapse to that. Yeah.
Okay, but none of the substantive arguments that you make on the framework matter.
You can. That's not necessarily true. I.e., like if
Why?
the AC collapses to the NC, even if you win your TGF, it would seem to like apply. Also, like there's other arguments that have
Wait,
sort of similar
so if the NC collapses to the AC, then like the theoretical warrants also don't apply?
Well, like, obviously we can make arguments either way for why you should either ignore or not ignore that, right?
Okay, so
You can make those
substantive warrants and theoretical warrants could both potentially matter in the 2NR? Like I can't collapse to one.
No, you can collapse to one, right? I'm just saying that certain arguments, i.e. like collapsing arguments, have interactions on the theoretical layer. You can collapse if just theory comes first, but substantive warrants have theoretical implications.
Okay.
Or they
So-
can be.
wait,
Just
so-
both of us can make arguments.
So like if I win that the NC warrants are incoherent and collapse to the AF, like if I win hijacks to the NC on a substantive layer, does that mean that the theoretical warrants don't matter
We
anymore?
can make arguments. That's the whole point, right?
Or
We
I
both
understand.
make
Wait, no, I
different
understand that we
views
can.
about why this is the case.
Okay, but like I want you to take a stance now.
If you want me to take a stance for like a theory violation, I will concede that theoretical norms come first.
Okay, and then we can't leverage any substantive arguments if we're just going for theoretical arguments.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about. Do you read any argument about how, or actually, do you read any solvency?
The Citrin and Fanks 14 evidence, which is the C point, says that specifically doing the counterplan does solve because it means that perpetrators will be deterred and it creates a cultural shift.
Okay, how does this like a college campus enforce a revenge porn law when revenge porn is online?
So anyone who discloses that sort of thing would be punished.
So how do they, do they take down the images?
They punish them,
Okay, so how does that solve?
right?
Like,
It
the
deters
images are
them
still-
and creates a cultural shift.
Okay, but the images are still online, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
That's
how do you
how, like,
solve
the
for like the
internet
violence
works.
that?
Right,
Yeah.
we don't pretend to solve for all the violence, right? But we
Okay,
solve for some
So
of it.
how do you solve?
And we're
How do you
preventative.
solve for violence when the images are submitted anonymously?
Obviously, we don't solve for every circumstance. but
Okay,
we
so
can
you
try
don't
to
solve when
it.
images are submitted anonymously.
Not in every circumstance.
Okay, do you or do you not solve when images are submitted anonymously?
I can make arguments for why we do, and it's
Okay,
not.
or like I want you to tell me now, like a lot of these images are obviously submitted anonymously. How does the counterplan solve?
So the Citrin and Fanks means it deters people from doing that in the future. Which means
Wait,
that even if we don't
it
solve
deters
now,
people if
it
there's a
deters people in
hypothetical
the
punishment,
future.
but how would there even hypothetically be a punishment for someone who
You
submits
can
things
find
anonymously?
people who anonymously sent it. You can try to like look on the
Okay.
internet. There's like
Does,
IP
starting
addresses.
crap, does the counterplan like establish a mechanism for anonymously looking into those sorts of things? Or I
No,
want you to just okay.
it's like
Okay.
other than normal
Okay.
means.
Are fairness and education bills?
Yes.
Is the argument about how the framework excludes inequality a TJF?
It's probably a pre-fiat reason for why the CAF warrants are bad.
Okay. Wait, you defend the counterpoint unconditionally, right?
Yep.
Okay, 105. Okay, the order will be case, then the counterpoint. Or like case, the util flow, and then the counterpoint.
Cool. Is there anything new?
Yeah, I said.
Case, you took out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, one more time.
It'll be the case,
Mhm.
then like it'll be case, then the util arguments, and then the
Case starting.
it'll be the case starting when everyone's good.
2 seconds. All right, I'm good.
Vote alpha. I will concede that TGS comes first, but pragmatism helps develop intellectual humility by encouraging recognition of uncertainty. This is key for the development of intellectual virtue. Woods and Roberts said everybody will better off for having epistemic humility, transmission, and obligation of knowledge, circle, acquisition, communication, the person, their social, study classrooms, their social, the ignorant person who's led direct on the television, digital views, the truth, new trend, the most powerful minds of factor for all these capacities, surprise, skepticism about television, discoveries, minority, unorthodox, maybe an asset, the humble, and grow as more teachers support the due to permeability of noetic structural extent. London 2K, that pragmatism is necessary to understand how interactions between people and government. That means it's educational. He allows people to understand how our advocacy works from debate to society, control developments in your education, and also keeping us inside framework as most proximal to the question of the public. Institutional policy even informs a key understanding of what it means for the public to relate to the state extent. To the framework is key to fostering conditions of inclusivity within a pluralistic society, especially Canada, because people come from different backgrounds and have different answers. My framework is uniquely inclusive of the way it fosters inclusion and debate. Now, you say that the framework. Inequality, no, the framework arises in response to the particularity of injustice, but also to point it makes to be much safer since it focuses on the idea that racism and oppression are definitely a bad thing, whereas the common plan says that they are conditionally bad, which means that definitely outweighs your arguments. Now, case proper. Extend doing the doing argument that impacts cannot be isolated from their history since historical reason that permeability is pragmatically useful. Good reason. Nor in favor that they links their counterplans to might be found with the abstract but ignores actual history. How these sorts of arguments are collected. I will not be extending arguments to deal with the badness of revenge, but rather the badness of institutional regulation. You concede arguments about co-option. Also, extend the democracy's procedural nonsense of institutional procedure that tells us how to avoid ethical questions, but does not create set answers. That takes up the counterplan equal, even interpretational exception is good. My offense. So it's under opposition to consider the advantages of the conception which takes your arguments about how there is no spillover effects. It's a question of whether or not we're able to even entitled to include those things that must go to the connection core. Extend beat it up with some arguments doing that the Constitution is shaped by more radical principles in light of the knowledge of freedom seeking to easily threaten to advance government interests. You say in terms of the Constitution is not so. No, the Constitution is just hyper aware of the fact that people will just misapply the Constitution in order to legitimize governmental power. You say that there's no reason to care about history. No, history is incredibly useful. You basically consider the Dewey arguments since it helps shape the way in which we view the internal world. It also provides hedges argument that we're more likely to be accurate in understanding in that way. So second sense in the development arguments in terms of their practical effects leadership is always about consolidation of power regardless of the particular interest that there's claims to that takes out their counterclaim. They can't claim about including victims, so that will just be appropriate to create authoritarian social systems that pollute democratic households. That way, point is a procedural question about how you justify your arguments for inclusivity to avoid claims about the advantage of particular forms each point. And when the office is not competent, the movement itself shapes toward tyranny and probably verified. Look at the Democratic Party. Now go to the util barns. 1 point util is war since people debate for the entire topic, which is that people will likely quit debate if we only have utilitarian discussion. 2 point practices is more applicable to what's literally no dissent has been empirically proven to be true, but pragmatism is an impact filter that determines whether the procedure that we use to arrive at arguments. 2 point utilitarianism makes it says that we only care about the majority majority, which means that we don't care about minority impression. 4 point, private 4 point increases, private equities and teams that have structurally better programs will always be at the advantage on the debate now and be counterblend. First is the framing issue, that it's a procedural question. The AC takes this absence to question whether or not we should empower the government to make this kind of decisions. The first is also permutation, permanent, common, constitutional distribution, sexually split damage, that is not constitutionally protected, which means a narrowly tailored restriction. Heller and 14 summarizes rule legislation that can withstand courts to enable one such a designated perpetrator malicious in an act of cause harm acting no only without consent of victim and expectation of privacy, and also will take up the argument to be the two in our to just prove that court statutes of intimidation should prefer logical arguments as they are causal about whether or not there is a possibility of a policy to you just force it underground since people will just be find ways to be to anonymously submit images, which means that there's literally no way in which people can hold individuals culpable, which outweighs since there is literally always also takes out your deterrent effect arguments. We do not know who's submitting images in the first place that we can never hold them accountable and they can never be punished. Legal remedies are actually go to the ACLU card. Laws that regulate non-consensual nude images are too broad. They shall free speech and prevent disclosure of important political images. ACLU, wording the law can be applied to any person who displays nudity without consent. Any criminal politics and transparent abuse and algorithm could be infected. Many will apply to pure girls containing nude images to avoid risk. Always things like the images of use rights for permanently destructural truth that also takes out your argument. You say that it's human rights, and you say that we care about rights. No, it is about structural inclusion in the way in which democracies can deal with violations of rights.
All right.
I didn't write down the exact seconds.
I have it, it should be 26.
Cool, thank you. Alright, so.
So I'm gonna pick for charger. Yeah, oh, thank you.
You got what I did right?
Yeah. All right.
Are you reading the menu?
Flash your source. All right, it's sent. What is counterplan, AC, substance, NC, framework, AC framework?
One more time.
Counterplan, AC, substance of AC, NC framework, AC framework. Everyone ready?
Yes.
Cool. Let's get started. Problem with the 1 ER is dropping all the reasons why I turns the case and only answering the performer double line. The answer's not even good in the first place. Let's start to compare the impacts of the AC and reason why I turns the app. They have dropped all of them. Extend the 8 point. It says you cannot experiment if you have trauma inflicted upon you, which means you're not even able to have the pragmatic discussion in the first place. This is a 100% drop argument includes 100% office. It's the highest level, the second highest level on the turns against the ODC because it means you cannot have any discussion of the practices that the ODC talks about if the people are not there to discuss in the first place because they are too busy because they have because of their feeling the traumatic consequences of having sexually explicit images disposed about them. Now, the C point is also dropped since it violates the rights-based conception that they concede to across the nation that you have that governments have the authority to regulate things when someone is violating your rights. For example, the murder example is taken across the nation. The government should, in public colleges, should also have the authority to violate things like the disclosure of non-consensual image distribution. But even if you don't violate any of that, the answer to the perform double blind is very poor. Extending the argument that this is finals of the TOC. They should not be able to exclude things like non-consensual image distribution underneath the framework, so I would not be good underneath the procedure of it. They say that there's a question of whether the governments are allowed to censor it, but if government is not censored, public college is not censored, then no one else will, and these people are left with literally no recourse. The 1 year or so fundamentally was out to, well, we can just say fuck it and just let them deal with it in some other way, but there's no other way to resolve this question, which means that they still link into this argument. Do not make debate unsafe. Even if there's a risk of a link here, they've conceded the impact of debate safety is so large that we should not even risk of it being true because to exclude people and set a precedent that people should be excluded of that non-consensual institution is a procedurally good thing that, or at least permissible thing, and that excludes people in basic institutions that control centrally to all the arguments. Do not have that if you're not access any of the arguments. The right people are not in the debate space in the first place. Now the arguments they make them line by line for answer the competition debate later. They say we question whether they make the government do this. Already answered this. Theirs is the only recourse they have access to. They say they say we drive it underground. But first, it's try or die. They are already not being punished right now, which means that the counterplan has to do at least something. I agree that deterrence effects. Second said at least not everyone's able to do not. So you can do other ways. For example, you can track IPs. You can deter people. Create the cultural shift, which is what the 600 Frank's evidence talks about. Which still saw a large majority of the impact, which means that even if you drive underground, it's not that relevant, and there's no impact to driving it underground because it's a question of whether people. There's no reason why you need to know if people do it. It's a question of if we can actually hold people responsible. They say chills free speech, but first that there's tons of alt-solvency. Public conversations can be started with articles of why not to which means the bad thing, which is why the porn industry, why we shouldn't go through and force people have psychological trauma, which means that the size of impact is really small. Second, that there's no link. We are not censoring the internet. We're just creating punishments of result. But three, the impact of the counterplan definitely outweighs the small impact of chilling free speech because it justifies psychological violence, which is much larger impact. Now the competition debate, they are way undercovering this issue. As I won this argument, the round is over. Here's a couple. If you think competition is messy and you resolve it and the event, come back to this over here to help you show through all the evidence of line by line security method. That also the counterplan solves 99% of the app, which means that as long as I win the counterplan turns case and they've lost the debate. First is the framing issues. First framing issue is sufficiency test versus yes versus no. It's counterintuitive to think but it's the app burden to prove by the counterplan. The counterplan is not competitive. But in this round, only piece of offense is counterplan. So risk perspective is non-zero risk. The counterplan
counterplan is competitive, the counterplan is competitive means that we should do the counterplan and hedge our bets just in case that not introducing is contradictory. We should do the counterplan just in case we're wrong. Second is that they do no 1 year weighing. Second, peer versus analytics, which means that if I compare my gold evidence or Sarah evidence in the 2 you have no choice of voting. At 3 is here's the weighing arguments proper. Recency is a comparatively most important issue because that should show recency is comparatively most important issue because that should show because legal questions change depending on what year it is because court precedent changes all the time. The B point is that author qualifications are comparatively more important because they determine things like how qualified an author is, but recency is comparatively more important because the court precedent changes. Now, my Goldberg evidence is way better than the Harlan 15 evidence. 8 point is that it's from 2016, while their evidence is from 2015 or earlier, which means that's taken out things like other precedents. B point, my evidence is from a law professor at Harvard Law and from Columbia, while their evidence is just how it could possibly be changed narrowly, which means it's completely not as important. Now, the libel on the Herald 13 and 15 evidence specific, just we can do it narrowly and check it back, but obviously we have also we're looking back in the overview. The C point is that we've empirical evidence that also struck down, which means that if the debate is at all close at the end of that, you should err negative on the topic, because the empirics are our way. That should be the tiebreaker for you. Even if that other things to be sufficiently done in the future, that doesn't mean this means that this should just function as a tiebreaker.
Case. Real quickly on the argument why it condemns racism on their framework arguments.
They can see the cooling 11 evidences that their framework justifies racism and exclusion because they're obsessed with paper over issues that I even sent across information that was a teacher. This always all their warrants on the neutral paper indicates that they justify racism and across by the arguments why race comes first and that rejecting racism is comparatively most important in the finals of the TOC, which means that their arguments are comparatively less important about educational affair, which doesn't matter. They just assert that it makes space safe and we're inclusive, but no, they've conceded a card for why that's not the case, and they just paper over these questions. And the fact that they say the counterplan is a good idea, that doing the counterplan is bad, is a proof of that argument. I mean, they don't access any of the arguments. Now, the line of the responses. First, they go for the argument so we have to be isolated from history, but we have to prove that if we were dealing with it. But I already made the argument that we can't just say fuck it. We need to do something about it, which only the counterplan can do. It's try or die framing. Now, the case arguments proper. They consider the intellectual gymnastics arguments, which proves that proves that all the arguments where they saw the counterplan way permissible, are just like intellectual gymnastics that justify the debate not being a safe space, which is argument of the counterplan arguments. Now, they'll lie about the arguments. They can see the authoritarian argument. They drop all my responses to them, which is the first and fifth argument. They can see the first argument that they are also authoritarian because they do not do things like protect things like non-constitutional speech. They also can see that we should be intolerant to those who are intolerant. For example, people who just distribute non-consensual images we should be authoritarian towards them, which means assault like argument. They say it could be misapplied in the future. They can see that fiat social link means that I get to determine what it is, not what the government college as well, which means that that's all that argument. They have no access to the argument. The last hope they have to go for is the historical argument. They mishandle the argument, extend the argument that this might be true in general, but we should do it in the instance of the pick because it means that the Constitution is screwed up. So we should not. So even if they're hyper aware, we should do it in this specific instance. So it doesn't actually make any sense. The counterplan turns the after. They don't. You shouldn't allow them to exclude it for with framework because it makes debate unsafe.
Okay. Cool. Should debaters lose for making debate unsafe?
My argument is that's a reason why I should turn that out.
Okay. But it's not a reason that I should lose.
No.
Okay, the order will be an overview, counterplan. Alright, when everyone's good.
I'm good.
There is a serious mistake in the 2NR because he completely misunderstands the entirety of the out framework. It is not preclusion arguments about saying that the impacts do not matter, but it says that the state is structurally not even in a position to assess those sorts of impacts since they have to look at things like history and whether or not it is structurally on different projects who consider a certain question, which means that if I preclude the analysis of your question on a higher level, then that means that all of your arguments will hypothetically go away. But second, you conceded a huge link term to the counterplan about how you never enable criticism of the government, which means that if I weigh that argument against everything, you extend the 2NR, that's sufficient. So go to the counterplan. Extend ICU 14 that laws that regulate non-constitutional lewd images are too broad to be still release and disclosure of important political images. You can see that outweighs things like images of abuse for widespread protest that lead to structural shifts. That outweighs the appointed outweighs on scopes to impact the entirety of college campuses, not just individuals in a particular circumstance, not in a particular circumstance viewpoint. It outweighs on longevity since it precludes the possibility for future forms of reform since it legitimizes authoritarianism. Also, third point, it proves that the counterplan is a bad idea since it does infringe on free speech, which means that it takes out all of your arguments about how it's trying to for the counterplan. Also, 4 point, there is revenge porn legislation that's coming from outside of college campuses that exists now, which means that definitely mitigates all of your arguments, which means that they should definitely outweigh uncertainly now. Go to case. You seriously mishandle all of the first you say that my framework makes the debate unsafe, but now you can see that the response that I look to the particular conditions of injustice, which enables us to have broader solutions, but also it's the arguments about how it is a question of rights. No, it is a question of the state's appropriate response in the way in which you can justify dealing with rights violations. You say that it's a bad thing if I exclude the counterplan. One, you should lose for reading this argument. Then if you read a counterplan, then if I answered it would make debate unsafe. You should not have read the counterplan in the first place. Also, 2 point, it's a question about what it justifies the government to be able to do with things that functions on a higher level, not the argument that I will be going on. And also you can see that the utilitarianism is definitely worse since it means that we can always justify oppression, which means that pragmatism, which means that it's trying to die for pragmatism. It's also not trying to die for revenge forms since there's legislation coming from outside of campuses, and it can't just be trying to die for one issue, rather it's a comparative analysis of the different issues at stake. Now extend the Dewey evidence, that cannot be isolated from your history since for some reason the verbal belief is pragmatically useful, give reason to every favorite. You say that you can't see fucking, now we have to do something. No, the absence that we can't say fucking, ignore history and the fact that the government will just literally use every single speech code to reentrench forms of oppression, which is also a solvency take out to the counterplan. We have to look at historical bases to determine what kind of solutions are most likely to be effective. So go to the counterplan, except the analysis of races in doing that the sometimes shaped by pragmatic principles created in light of the knowledge freedom of speech, easily threatened to advance government interests. Report is taken into account particular everyday. You see that proves the Constitution says so. No, you can see the stack of evidence that you evaluate arguments and their particular effect. Censorship is always about consolidating power. You have to weigh arguments at any point. It's a procedural question about how you justify arguments precludes ability to claim balance particular form of speech, and that even when the office is co-opted, the movement itself takes tyranny, which leads to overall structure oppression. Look, all of the other arguments are non-unique about things like how they're not removing other sort of regulations. Those also apply in the negative world. The question is whether or not the government is able to take approach to certain problems that are existing that is grounded in history, which is kind of like just proves that there are bad things, but doesn't prove that the NC is the best response.
Is there a reason that building is I would like to walk your distance to make my decision.
That's really a thing you need.
Okay, yeah, you got
You're so I'm kind of how aggressive
I know it's not working.
the computer fully sucks.
I know I'm making I know, it's way too much space. Like if that was on actual paper,
See the entire floor. I should stop drawing. I always could just do the line. Case in point, something I would like to watch. Getting working on the flow 101. You can probably go watch the Olympics quarterfinals. Titus with Lucas Clark. Titus and Catherine lost Lucas Clark. Definitely. Even though he's got you did not orientation exclusion. You did not know the judges decided to evaluate means nothing. Stand by. You dropped nothing. I watched the round. I can watch it. You were wrong. Oh, my friend told me he's not
Don't make the series. Just do it. He's not even understanding the joke. No one here's gonna send a picture for you. And we're 13. We're in these 2 playing room.
We're at 10.
We're at like 8. We're at 8.
There's like 6 seconds.
Release me.
You
The
really
season's
tried.
over.
4,
I'm not sleeping.
2, 1. No, you got it. I got it. I'm not doing it.
I'm not.
There, you.
I'm not no.
Yes.
I don't even remember the call. I don't remember the first. Honestly. I promise.
Make sure you.
Honestly, I don't even remember the first one. I forgot about it.
I'm doing
No. All right, look, I'm You don't know?
Oh, no.
You don't know?
Hold on, I want to make sure I get
Well, you have it saved? No, that's not my one.
I got it.
I lost the. No, I lost the bubble round to straight on stuff. There's an interesting one. Stevens with this.
I broke my phone this weekend, so he was trying to raise.
Yeah. Mia is arguably. Wait, did you see what he did? While watching her history. Her boyfriend got. Who else?
Oh, no.
All these as first as no, I think you guys are getting Florida debate. I know. And Ram Prasad. Ram Prasad.
Alright, everybody. We're gonna hear from you.
I was gonna ask you, would you guys decide the greatest debater?
Yeah.
That's a fair spot.
In a world where
Oh, come on, stop. I don't know.
everybody.
No.
In a world where people are nearly seem to be running rapid and literally come on.
You're a mean. Bully. Everyone's good. So I watched. So there was a time when I had really big TikTok for Joe, right? And I watched.
Well, does Neil limit the time?
You're now rounds.
That part was not.
Yeah, I did not realize.
Yeah, that'd be easy, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just read the Halloran 14 card and then the ACLU card, and then I made it.
Okay, so I
No, seriously, though.
See what's my actually here.
Yeah, actually.
It's on South Broadway, that's all I know. Are you DoorDashing? Are you DoorDashing?
No, I'm going to.
It's like Uber Eats.
So, yes.
I think there's a little gap.
This place on Valley. I think it's
Oh, did you already explain it?
Are you taking English? Basic Calc? You're a freshman. Period. Taking basic Calc. As a freshman.
What's up?
You need to stop. Pretty good. It's the highest math in high school. Okay, basic Calc is the highest one. It's like other jobs, you know, like stats and AQR, but they're not.
I think for the mouth. No, I know. It's like a weird mix of
No, oh, I
will.
Okay, yeah,
I will, but you have to see it.
It's the NyQuil, so we get through the I went to Wesley.
Oh, cool.
Actually, I saw your SU sticker. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. What was your
That person. It's like one of those. It's like, who do you think I'm hanging out with right now? He said who?
His place.
Yeah.
Where you are you living? Does that house now?
Yeah. So last year.
Yeah.
We're talking Who else? Jason Evil. Just okay.
We're talking about best food movies.
I don't know this.
Chris Kim. Chris Kim of Deadpool. Defender of Justice.
Real
Firefly is really great. I love
Roll the dice. Real theater.
No, it's not Roll the Dice, but it's Peacemaker.
What about real time excellence? 7 minutes.
Reese Billy's always in the second when he's like, talking about bro. Or you could say reasonability is a spike. And right ability is, and then when I do the character, you just have to read into the violence spike. Say yes. Right on this. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to like like the contency on nuclear water topic could technically be
You don't talk about right.
That's Welsh. Better watch out. Better watch out.
I would never say.
I would never say all day, you know. I would start the conversation.
We are on. You know, in a world where you
Run rampant.
more important than ever. We did go to the I didn't get sick. I could see that. I'm not. I don't know. I don't think realism is quite
Oh yeah,
Hey, you're so
I said you're a senior.
I thought you were a junior. You're so cold.
Kyle is
Yeah.
You and I are like the only kind of person that does So if you're getting your text, oh yes. Oh no, I gotta win this. It's such bullshit. I didn't have any scores. My team was bad. Yeah, no, I almost
To be honest, yeah, that's the one person that I don't understand myself.
What's this bullshit? Like my team was Daniel Harrison, like because I didn't have anyone else. Yeah, no, I was saying I was gonna play. Bobby
Already started drama.
Speaking of drama, there was not enough drama. There was so much potential. There was so much potential for it though. That I yeah, no, I'm saying there was potential.
Well, I mean, Rob protested that's drama. Yeah, Rob would bring the back to enhancing. You can compete if you want. Yeah. And then I was
Decisions made.
Alrighty. We got the debaters?
Nope.
All right, we got one of them. Where's Parker?
Well, no, the problem with that is because you can't like set for
Tails.
even though the TOC is like your message market that race, sexuality, and if they had any further questions,
well, those aren't official parameters, right?
Yeah.
So they're still not violating. Well, you need official when you're in trouble.
yeah, it's suggested.
I don't know. I feel like if you did your press right though, you can. Yeah. I think I only had like one white male that. I don't think yeah, it worked for you, but yeah, it
Not our fault. All right. Congratulations to both debaters for making it to the final round. This was an excellent round. It was fun to judge. It's a 2-1 decision for the negative.
Alrighty, I'm set. I guess I'll find out why I'm set, but in my mind, I thought this round is pretty decisive.
before I get into the RFD proper, I will say, I guess I wish this whole like TJF business had really never happened. I think pragmatism equals doing democracy versus like revolutionary intuitions equals youth. It would be a much more entertaining and useful debate to watch. Instead, it devolves into this like weird like reductio ad absurdum is now a theory standard where if you prove that their ethical system justifies bad things, that's now like a theoretical voter for safeness rather than like a reason and substantively wrong. I'm not sure why, but that's the mutual assumption. I also understand why like the one chooses to like strategically re-raise on this issue. Or does it make me sad, but it makes sense strategically. Assuming this framing, I wish I had, but assuming that this is the most important thing, I think the affirmative is decisively ahead on the theoretical justification for the framework. The 2NR doesn't even go to any like proactive reason why like util is good. You just extend this Cullen card, the card that suggests that her framework would not account for inequalities, etc. And I think you falsely assert that it's conceded, which it's not. The 1AR not only says no focusing on historical particularities can explain why those things are bad, but it goes further and says not only that, but the app is better at that because it can explain why they are unconditionally bad, whereas the negative utilitarian framework would countenance racism in some instances. Lastly, I think even further, on the util flow, which you never go to, there's an additional argument which says that you privilege the majority over the minority, which separately is also a reason why your framework is unethical. And so I think all of these, I think, pretty overwhelmingly suggest that the app is better at explaining why racism is wrong, inequality is wrong, etc. And for some reason, this is a theoretical reason rather than a substantive reason for the framework. So now in terms of evaluating the debate proper, I think the thing that the negative like never really comes to grips with is just like the app's framework, and I think she's like browbeating you with this, it's not like democracy or pragmatism as a terminal impact in a sense. It's democracy as a decision procedure. And so I think a lot of the arguments you're going for to like interact the counterpoint with the case do not remotely interact in the way that you seem to think they do. So like these like turns of the case arguments seem to very clearly appeal to a consequentialist sense of what our impacts are, which is like down the road there might be more of these bad things. And her framework is, can we pose that question in the first place? And so to me, using the Korematsu example from the one I see, it'd be like, well, conceivably, if war led to more rights violations, Korematsu would be good, is the way that turns the case argument would function. And it seems clearly if consequentialism is unethical and should be categorically rejected because of the idea of privileging a majority over a minority, then clearly we should not be evaluating the framework in that way. We should be evaluating, is it ethical to pose the question in order to solve more long-term rights violations. I don't think turns of the case works if she wins the framework. B, I'm not sure the sufficiency framework makes any sense under this framework, because like, well, if I made the right decision using the right ethical procedure in the last 99 decisions, and I'm like off the hook and can make an unethical decision this time, that doesn't make any sense. Lastly, the intolerant of intolerance argument, this argument I like the most, but it's certainly never developed beyond like those words. And I also think it doesn't really get past like the way in which the app links to the framework. And, in the sense that this would mean that the government could punish a criminal and that it wouldn't be wrong to like lock that criminal up. But it wouldn't seem to justify, using her own example in Crossix, something like the government is like locking up people indiscriminately, knowing some are innocent, to get the goal of being intolerant. So like using unjustly acquired evidence in order to punish criminals. That still involves an unjust procedure. And so when she wins offense in terms of like these things being abused, justifying authoritarian practices, etc., those seem like examples of independently violating rights in an undemocratic way to get the goal of being intolerant of intolerance. And so I think even that argument in a vacuum itself is insufficient. The last thing I think that could potentially be relevant, even if she wins the framework, is this just like, I fiat away all the problems with the counterpoint argument, which is, I think, largely an assertion. And I'll explain more reasons in a second why I think this is flawed. But the brief thing I'll say right now is it seems best articulated, or in my mind imagine, is the reason why like no spillover is true, like the counterpoint doesn't lead to other laws. But it seems like the most effective version of the app argument is not even about like you fiating that it remains within the realm of revenge porn laws. It's that the revenge porn laws themselves that you fiat existing are overbroad or get exploited, especially when like your own articulation, like, okay, you get to fiat whatever you want and interpret the counterplan, is just you create a punishment. And then like, how the hell do we determine who gets that punishment? Is like, somehow we just like look at IPs and then the like colleges are left to decide that. It certainly doesn't seem like you get to fiat, you do it the right way. You haven't even established what the right way is, or said in the counterplan anything that would be right. And the things that you are saying in the 2NR sound, if anything, very draconian. So I think even giving you like the ability to like fiat the right thing, and that it somehow is relevant, it doesn't seem to solve any portion of the procedural constraints. So I think independently of the app wins on the framework, there's a procedure, and employing the counterpoint would violate the procedure, even if it long-term leads to better consequences. Separately from that, I think even if it's framed in a more consequentialist fashion, I think the negative is also pretty far behind. I think there's a pretty big authoritarianism style disadvantage to the counterplan. I think that this Abu Ghraib type stuff I don't think there's ever really a great answer to it. The things you say are largely like, look at my evidence. The Goldberg evidence is more recent, it's more qualified. I read the evidence, I read your evidence in great scrutiny. And in fact, your evidence seems to support her assertion that there are already laws that are not on college campuses. The first line of the Goldberg evidence is, states have begun to criminalize the publication of nude photos if the person publishing the photos knows or should have known that the subject of the image did not consent to disclosure. It's like, this law exists. The thing you say in the 2 and R that I guess might complicate that is, but courts might strike it down. And if that is true, I can't fathom why that applies only to federal laws and not to colleges. Like, obviously, if the court thinks that these things are violations of the First Amendment, it could just apply that as well to the counterplan. I'm not sure how that's a distinction. All I know is there's definitely these laws, and further that, if anything, those laws have kind of overshot in terms of punishment because her evidence is they're draconian, can be over-applied. And so all the counterplan would do is like further get colleges muddled and involved into this already inefficient and draconian process, which I think is bad. If I thought the counterplan, I guess, could have some modicum of like additional solvency, then maybe it could outweigh the like large risk of getting abused in all sorts of ways and justifying long-term rights violations, which I think that's also ahead in weighing. But I cannot fathom for the life of me how it does that. I don't think you've ever explained at any point, even when it's President Cross-Legs, like what did colleges do? How do colleges in any way additionally contribute to like the criminal laws that exist, or in any way make those better or more effective? I read your evidence for you, and the only card that even is pointed to as solvency is clearly in the context of the criminal laws she's saying already exist, and it even goes further. If anything, it's like more of like a negative in the sense of like less than zero, not negative in the sense of good for you. Negative solvency card, because it says that alternative solutions to these criminal statutes might be counterproductive or ineffective because they're too watered down. So, if anything, that seems to be describing that part of the card, which describes the counterplan. And I could not explain at any point, based on any argument that's debated around, any evidence that's debated around, what a college could or should do that would contribute to revenge porn. There's like, maybe we look at IP addresses and just like impose a penalty. Clearly there has to be like a step B or a step C in there. And the moment I start to like imagine how that could function, especially in terms of like on college campuses, which is the counterplan of the plan's focus. Are they looking at students' browsing history to determine that what revenge porn was on their campus? Are they looking at their like the data on their computers? Any way they could like solve even a modicum of revenge porn clearly seems to like, the moment it starts to hint at solvency, seems to like very massively to the argument she's explaining, which is like any way it happened can easily get exploited. And given the historical framing, which I don't think is largely contested by the 2 and R, I should be very skeptical that like the laws now magically get applied in a very good way by a college that has historically been bad. So I think even barring the app framework entirely, it is like much more likely to be exploited and cause all sorts of long-term oppression, shut down dissent, etc. on student college campuses than actually do anything to solve revenge porn. I think that's essentially zero net benefit.
One question. For drills in the future, with kids over the summer, etc., is there a winning 2 and R?
Was there a winning 2 and R? I will get back to you in a second with a more detailed answer, but to me it seems like one big hang up in the 2 and R here is you just like set yourself up to need to win the counterplan. And it seems like a very crucial missing hole in this counterplan is what the hell colleges do to like solve revenge porn, like the college level solvency question, which the app is, I think brings up earlier in the debate, even in cross-ex. And you don't have a card, you don't have an analytic explanation that really establishes that. And so I think if you had like that card ready to go, maybe then you have a winning 2 and R that can rejoin that claim. And then secondly, I think a 2 and R that's much more likely to win is one that like really substantively engages the framework, I guess theoretically engages the framework, but answers to sort of like evaluate this in a procedural aspect. Like the interaction he's doing don't really answer it as a decision procedure, they answer it as like okay, you've got a weighing argument why your consequence is good. And so I think a 2 and R that speaks to why decision procedures are bad or like could have exceptions, etc., would be more helpful. Oh, and the last thing I'll mention is even under the utility framing, I also don't think this sufficiency thing makes a whole lot of sense because like I understand like sufficiency framing as a concept, but the app is not like a brink impact of like you solved a majority to get us past the brink. It seems like the app impact, even in a consequential sense, is the law that you don't do itself gets exploited. So like you also create 99 non-exploitative laws, and then you create an exploitative law that itself gives colleges the ability to exploit. So I'm not sure how like doing 99 okay things resolves a linear impact in the way that sufficiency could resolve like a brink extinction impact. So I don't think that framing, although you harp on it for a while, really gets you anything. But I could explain how it mitigates the app anyway.
I agree. The affirmative wins the pragmatist framework. The main joint argument on this is the extension of Collins, that pragmatism ignores inequalities, racisms, etc. But the card, as was mentioned, isn't very good. And I think that the 1A and 2A response is enough that no, we look at these things situationally and are discussing how to respond to them. But even more, the most important argument here is the combination of that with the conceded argument that maximizing expected well-being only conditionally condemns those things. So I think the affirmative is definitively ahead on the framework, I guess, like whether we're looking at pragmatism or maximizing expected well-being. Next question is whether this neg offense links. And the argument, I think the highest level argument here mirrors the sort of theoretically justified framework arguments, which is that the affirmative can't exclude this offense from the framework debate because that would make debate unsafe. In the 1A, you argue that you're not excluding it, you're just saying it's like precluded or there's a prior question. And that's more or less the same thing you say in the 2AR. I don't get the difference between precluding it and excluding it. And the 2A doesn't respond to the argument, the weighing argument, which I think precludes, like even if I thought that you were somewhat ahead, he says that the negative says that I should view this as a probabilistic thing. So even if you were possibly right about that, that a risk of it being false would mean that I should err negative on this question and grant those links to the affirmative framework. So that I think is probably the most crucial argument in terms of just like up layering above. It probably doesn't make sense according to the substance of your framework for this to link in. I grant that, and I get why there's like a prior question, but that offense, that substantive explanation is not on the same plane as the argument that it would make debate safe to include it, to link it into the framework. So there's like, that's like maybe incoherent, but I don't see you pushing that in the 2A in particular. Beyond that though, I think that the other two links are largely conceded. And so again, even if you're on the right side of your framework, you're on the wrong side of the flow in terms of winning your framework against the two additional links that the negative makes. So those are, one, that you cannot experiment, like you cannot participate in pragmatism if you are exposed to the harms of non-consensual image distribution. The neg makes weighing in the 2N about why this is the highest impact under the affirmative framework because it's exclusion from the participation in it. Again, this is probably like kind of bastardizing your framework, but I don't have, like you just say there's a prior question to it. No reason why like prior question outweighs this thing. So there's just no weighing on that. And the second argument is that it violates individual rights, which you concede in cross-X is relevant to the framework as per the question, why can't people murder each other? So again, these are independent of the pre-fiat reason, or pre-fiat-ish, I don't know if that's what you call it, but the highest level layer reason to grant links to the F framework. These are just substantive reasons. And they're also going to be relevant to why I think that the neg offense outweighs the AF turns or like some of the other arguments. So now I'm just looking at the counterplan offense. I think the neg does solve and has competition, at least in particular because the 2A isn't going for no solvency or for competition arguments. The argument you do go for is that there's legislation coming. I don't have that on my flow in the 1A, so I'm not even looking at it, but there's also no evidence on this, so I don't think, even if I had it on my flow in the 1A, I would be persuaded by it very much. I would think it's just light mitigatory defense, especially with no evidence. So I think the neg is solving deterring non-consensual image distribution in a cultural shift that helps to solve for the problem. The 2A has a couple like turns or arguments that it says outweigh. One is that this causes tyranny by consolidating power. I just think you're behind on the flow here that you've conceded in the 1A that fiat solves, which like, sure, that's not, I mean, how exactly it solves, I'm not positive, but it's not like, it's not implausible that it would solve, and you're not saying anything on it in the 1A. So in the 2A, I'm not willing to grant you like a brand new argument on that. And beyond that, I think that you're conceding the uniqueness in the question, which is that the affirmative lives in a world of authoritarianism too. So it's not like it would be uniquely bad to consolidate some more power. This is also related to the Constitution argument. I think, again, the 2N seems ahead on this question. The PIC is an example of the Constitution being flawed. And I'm also not clear on the impact of this, which is why I think that those substantive links would outweigh like the importance of following the Constitution. So finally, it's just like neg's chilling turn versus, or the AF's chilling turn versus the neg's solvency. I think that you're conceding a little bit of link mitigation, that the neg isn't censoring the internet, that it's punishing people who post things, but it's not like removing things so that this can still occur. I have no answer to that in the 2A. I also, more importantly, I just think you're behind on the weighing, that even if I gave you like strong strength of link to this, you've conceded substantive reasons why, all the reasons from the 1 and C as to why the neg offense links into the app framework because it's psychological violence. because it gives people access to the pragmatist, like whatever perspective, and because it protects their rights. All of those, I think, are reasons that outweigh the like 2A arguments as to why it like helps political reform, which isn't impacted as strongly back to the framework. And the scope argument, I just think you're wrong on that. The negative probably has wider scope. It affects more people than the affirmative does. So I think neg has offense and it links to the framework in outways.
Cool. I ended up deciding pretty similar to Eric. I guess although the way I resolve unbelievable questions is pretty similar to Eric, I'll go through like my own like specific thought process because it does differ a little bit. So I think the framing at the top of the 2N that like literally any risk of debate being unsafe means that is sufficient to vote, or for sufficient to allow like neg offense to link to that framework is not touched in the 2AR, and that does a lot of work. It kind of makes this turns into a almost like competing in terms of your debate, but like you can just win a risk of offense to debate being unsafe and it would be sufficient. So I really filter all the impacts back to that specific standard. And in the 2AR, I really only get like as offense from the affirmative and linking into this, like a couple sentences about how util is definitely worse because it can always justify oppression. I don't know, like they were talking a lot about different arguments being in the 2AR. That's all I got in the 2AR on that particular question. And I think there's not a lot of interaction for me in the 2AR between that and the like the Lewin, I don't know what this card's name is, but the Carver case about how pragmatism involves stress and racism. I think those probably like, I don't know, I'm not sure how to resolve them. They're not weighed or compared to each other particularly well in the 2A or 2N. I do think the 1AR is probably out of this question, but I think that's lacking in the 2A. So that's, I don't know, maybe I need to resolve that. But I don't think I have to resolve that because I think the negative is definitively ahead of whether this like sort of like my offense needs to be able to link into that framework. And so with that argument, yeah, so the initial negative argument, right, is that you can't exclude this impact, otherwise it would make debate unsafe. Your response is that it's not that you're saying the impact is not normally bad, you're just saying that procedurally the negative cannot employ the counterpart to resolve that. The 2N response I have to that is that if you can't employ the counterpart to resolve that, then there's no alternative or no recourse, right? The 2A's response, I get two sort of presses from the 2A on this. The first argument is just a brand new argument about how Parker should have read the not in the 1AR, I'm not going to evaluate it. The second argument is about how the second argument there is just like kind of a reiteration of the initial argument that it's about the government's authority to act in the situation, not the normative quality of non-consensual image distribution, which is just not a second line of defense. It's just a reiteration of the first line of argument. And that's not really sufficient. There are some other answers on the other parts of the flow that might interact with this. So you sort of like answer this try or die claim, which is essentially the argument that Parker's using to answer your answers to this argument. And your answers there are there's alternative solvency from big measures coming off campus. I agree with Eric here that this is not in the 1AR and would require evidence for me to really buy it. And then you also make the argument that and this is the only other answer is the sentence I get. Can't be try or die for one issue. It's comparative analysis of different issues that are distinct. I just don't know what that sentence means, to be quite honest. Like that's just I don't know how that really interacts. If I were to understand what that sentence means, it kind of sounds like the quote unquote intellectual gymnastics that Parker is saying is bad and used to avoid having to deal with these concrete material problems. So yeah, I buy that the negative counterclaim impact should link in the affirmative framework for those reasons. On this ACL U-turn, the way I see this flow is you've extended this turn, and the only work done which way is weighing. I think you just extended the turn like straight through ink. So some of the responses are like there are alternative ways in which we can criticize the government. It doesn't like there's no reason why images in particular are crucial. An argument about why, like that Eric mentioned, that it's not actually removing things from the internet, and then a piece of weighing analysis that would say that those two mitigatory things are sufficient to prove that trauma is a bigger impact if that trauma would be able to impact, given that those are two pieces of significant mitigation. I just don't think the 2A addresses any of those. It just does its own way, but yeah, I don't think it's enough.
Well, thank you.
All right. Good job.
Nina, can I get a picture of y'all?
Oh, yeah.
Pictures with me.